Here are some facts that are likely to shock you. Right now in Ontario, more than 50,000 people are sitting on a waiting list for a long-term care bed. If you needed one today, you could be waiting 1 to 3 years. In some areas, it's actually over 5 years. And while you wait for a spot in a long-term care, you look at a retirement home. Well, that can run you $3,800 to $6,500 a month or more, depending on the level of care and amenities offered. Now, if you look at assisted living, which is a little more independent, it often lands at $3,500 to $6,500 a month, again, depending on services. So that's the reality of a lot of families in Guelph and Waterloo region that are running into right now. It's not a distant worry. It's showing up in real decisions this month in real houses. Ontario committed to building 58,000 new long-term care beds by 2028. And as of earlier this year, only 6,700 were built, with another 1,800 in the pipeline. That's a long way short of the target. And it's one of the reasons the wait lists keep growing instead of actually shrinking. So I'm not here to talk about politics. I'm really here to let you know that families are asking different questions. Instead of which retirement home do we tour next, they're actually asking things like, what if mom and dad just moved in with us? For a long time, that question felt like it belonged to other cultures, not to mainstream Ontario families. Now, the old belief was simple. That's what happens somewhere else, not in our family. The emerging belief is very different now, with wait lists measured in years and retirement homes costing $4,000, $5,000 plus a month. Having a parent move in starts to look less like a compromise and more like the option that actually makes sense, both financially and emotionally. So in this video, I'm going to show you why that shift is happening across Ontario right now. I'll also show you about a tax credit that the federal government created specifically to help in this matter. And I'll show you the loan program that just got a lot bigger. And stay for the top 6 things you actually need to think through before you turn a spare bedroom or a basement into somewhere your parent can live. These are really important things to consider. So let's start with this scenario. Imagine a family in Kitchener. The adult daughter and her husband own a detached home, and it has an unfinished basement. Her mother is 74, lives alone across town, and has started forgetting to take her medication. The daughter has looked at retirement homes. Now, the closest one with a room available quoted $4,600 a month for assisted living, so fairly independent. She's also called about long-term care and been told the wait could be years, not months. And her brother, who lives out of province, isn't convinced a basement, a suite is the answer either. He worries it puts a lot of day-to-day responsibility on his sister. Her mother, in this scenario, isn't thrilled about any of it. She raised 3 kids in her own home. She doesn't love the idea of being the one who needs looking after. That resistance is very normal, and it's worth naming instead of glossing over. Nobody wants to feel like they've become a project that their children have to manage or a burden. What usually shifts things isn't a spreadsheet. It's often specific moment. Maybe it's a fall or a recurring missed dose medication that turns into a hospital visit. Or maybe the retirement home tour where that family sees, someone $45,000 monthly costs that actually is basically one room. So in this scenario, instead of touring another retirement home, the daughter starts looking into finishing that basement into a proper suite for her mother. Not just a bedroom down the hall, a separate entrance, a small kitchen, her own bathroom, an actual self-contained space. Her mother can close the door and still feel like it's her own. Many retirees are in their 60s and 70s and older. They've been in their homes 20 plus years and they own them outright or close to it. And they're trying to figure out what that next chapter actually looks like for themselves. And that's who I help. My focus isn't just the sale. It's the planning that happens before, during, and even after the sign goes on the lawn. So here's what's actually happening across the country, not just in one family's basement. According to 2021 census, there are almost 442,000 multi-generational households in Canada. That's up 21% over the last 20 years. And Stats Can also reports 9.5 million Canadians now live in a multi-generational or intergenerational household. You know, and among that group, 3/4 of that group with their adult children, and 1/4 of the same group live in a household with 3 or more generations under one roof. So this isn't as uncommon as it may seem. Ontario is one of the highest multi-generational rates of any province. It's 4% of all households, in fact. So some cities are far higher. Brampton sits at 14%, the highest rate of any Canadian city. I know that's in the GTA, not Guelph or Waterloo region, but the same pressure of high housing costs and long care wait lists exists there too. And the trend is spreading outward from these bigger cities. And the federal government has noticed this shift, and they've built 2 programs around it. So let me tell you about the first one: multi-generational home renovation tax credit. If you renovate to create a self-contained secondary unit for a parent 65 or older, or an adult relative who qualifies for a disability tax credit, you can claim 15% of up to $50,000 in eligible renovation costs. That credit is worth up to $7,500. It was introduced in 2023, and it's ongoing refundable credit. It can only be claimed once per qualifying family member. Now, the second program is called the Secondary Suite Loan Program. In 2024 fall economic statement, the federal government doubled the loan amount from $40,000 to $80,000 with a 15-year term at a 2% interest rate. That's really quite amazing. It's built for exactly this kind of project: turning a basement into an apartment, or adding a garden suite or a laneway home suite. There's also an option to refinance an insured mortgage for up to 90% of the home's post renovation value, as long as it's up to $2 million, amortized over as long as 30 years. So, one honest note on this one: the program has been announced, but its rollout has been reported delayed. I can't find that it's actually running. So it may not be fully up and running yet. So if you're counting on it, check the current status with CMHC to find out more details. So those 2 programs are federal, and they apply anywhere in Canada, but they're also help closer to home. Here in Kitchener, Waterloo, or Cambridge, which is the region of Waterloo, runs a program called Ontario Renovates. It's meant to help you add an affordable in-law suite to your home. You can get up to $25,000 as a fully forgivable loan over a 15-year term. It's interest-free, and you don't pay it back as long as you stay in the home and don't default over that 15-year period. There is also up to a $5,000 more on top of that if you add accessibility features like a wider doorway or a walk-in shower. So Guelph sits in Wellington County, not Waterloo region. So this specific program doesn't cover our area in Guelph. If you're in Guelph, check locally to see what's available here. At present, I don't know of any programs that are currently available. And in Ontario, Regulation 462/24 changed the zoning rules in 2024 to make this easier. Most properties can now have up to 3 residential units on one lot. Minimum lot size requirements were removed for these additional units, and there's no maximum floor space index for the property either. This means the ratio between the total floor area of the building relative to the size of the lot is no longer a concern. There are still rules though. A required separation between buildings is required, a maximum lot coverage of up to 45%, and your local municipality still layers its own zoning bylaws on top of that provincial regulation. So this is easier than it used to be. It isn't unrestricted and it isn't automatic. However, it is an improvement. And it's also worth knowing this only applies to certain types of homes. A detached home with a basement or enough lot size for a garden suite are real options. Now, a condo or townhome with shared walls and a shared roof usually doesn't meet the requirement, at least not under this program. And if you're in a condo right now and your family is heading in this direction, the conversation looks different. It might mean your parent buying or renting something closer by instead of building a suite in an existing home. None of this happens quickly either. You've got to understand that. Between the permit applications, the approvals, the actual construction, Most families are looking at a minimum of 6+ months from decision to move-in day. Sometimes it's even closer to a year. So if your parents' situation feels urgent, that timeline matters just as much as the budget does. And here's who's actually driving this decision to shared living. Who is it? Well, in almost every case I see or hear about, it's the adult child, not the parent. The parent is usually not the one asking to move in with their kids. They're often resistant to it at first, at least until they've had a chance to sit with the idea. And here's the part that surprises people. Once a parent does move in, the thing that often wins them over isn't the money or the convenience, it's the grandkids. Being down the hall or, downstairs and being able to come up instead of scheduled Sunday visit changes how the arrangement feels for both generations. Now, I want to be honest with you because there isn't a perfect answer here. A secondary suite isn't the right move for every family. If the relationship between the parent and adult child is already strained, putting them under one roof doesn't actually fix any of that. It just removes the option of going home to cool off. And if a parent needs a real level of medical care, a basement suite without proper support can leave an adult child doing the work of a trained caregiver, unpaid, exhausted, and without backup. That's a genuine risk, not a detail to skip past. And if you're building a suite isn't realistic for your situation because of the type of home you're in, or maybe the lot you're on, that doesn't mean your only other option is a retirement home. Some families choose to buy a smaller home near their parent instead of, or help their parent move into a condo or adult lifestyle community that is closer to them rather than under the same roof. The goal isn't always to live together. Sometimes it's just to live close enough that a bad night doesn't feel so isolating for either one of you. So if you're the one thinking about this, either as the parent or the adult child, here's 6 things that actually matter before you commit to it. Number 1, call your municipality before you call a contractor. Ontario Regulation 462/24 sets the provincial floor, but Guelph, Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge each have their own zoning bylaws layered on top of that. So what's allowed on a lot in one city isn't automatically allowed 2 streets over in another municipality. 2, run the real numbers, not just the renovation quote. Compare the total cost of the suite minus the tax credit and the loan program against 2, 5, or maybe even 10 years of retirement home cost would actually be at $4,000 or $5,000 a month. And for a lot of families, the suite pays for itself faster than they expect. So get more than one quote too. Renovation pricing on secondary suites varies more than people assume, especially once plumbing and a second entrance are involved. 3, think about what happens to the house later. A basement apartment or a laneway suite can really add value when you eventually sell, but it can also narrow your buyer pool if it's built awkwardly or without the right permits. Anything done without a permit becomes your problem, the seller, at resale, not the buyers. And it can complicate financing for whoever buys the house next. 4, talk to your lender before you talk to a designer. Refinancing to cover the renovation changes your mortgage. It changes your monthly payment and sometimes the amortization of your mortgage. So it's really worth knowing those numbers before you fall in love with a floor plan. And 5, have an honest conversation before the renovation starts, not after. What does independence actually mean to your parent? What does support actually look like day to day? Who else in the family is expected to help? And have they actually agreed to that? Those answers matter more than a floor plan does. Skipping them is where these arrangements tend to break down later on. And 6, don't rule out outside support just because a family is under the same roof now. Home care visits, respite services, and community programs still matter. Moving in together doesn't mean one person has to carry all of it alone. The wait list isn't getting shorter, and the cost of retirement home isn't getting cheaper, unfortunately. So that much the data is very clear on. What's less clear and what only your family can answer is whether living under one roof again is the right next chapter for everyone involved? Or is it just the fastest way out of a hard decision you're facing? That's worth sitting with before you pick up a hammer or call a contractor. So I'll see you in the next video.